you get into the rural areas, and you run into a lot of good people, but it is a totally different situation depending on where you're at.
Welcome to the Triple P Podcast, premier, professional, and proactive, brought to you by the Ohio Fire Chiefs Association. I'm your host, Clayton O'Brien, and I'm the fire chief for the city of Oregon. We're back with part two with Chief Mike Bell, Mayor Mike Bell, Fire Marshal Mike Bell. As we continue the interview here, let's get right into it. How many counties have you gone to when you were the marshal?
Oh, man.
Because isn't that like a goal, like of marshals usually is to try to like travel? Like you went to different parts of the state that you had never been to, never talked to anybody there. So that was, that's a huge accomplishment to get to some of those areas. But I feel like that's kind of a goal of some of the, or at least that's what I hear.
Well, it's a goal, but you got to be there long enough.
Oh, true. Because you were there for 2 years, right?
Yeah. I was shooting for it. I had a map.
Yep.
And I was just checking them off, and they would tell me where. Okay, you've been here, because I have other people that are traveling with me, and so I was shooting for it. I probably got about halfway through, but it was Ohio is a very interesting place. It is not just what you see in the major cities. When you get into the rural areas, and you run into a lot of good people, but it is a totally different situation depending on where you're at. For me, some of these people sound like they're from the deep south, and they're not that far from Toledo.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But when you're talking to them, you're like, where are you from? Well, I'm just from down here, St. Mary's or something like that, and I'm like, you talk like that. I remember that in football, because we got these guys in the dormitory and they're talking like that. I'm like,
you get that up in Michigan too.
Yeah.
You go north and it's south. Wait a minute, I'm
right.
going the wrong direction.
Actually, North Carolina, wherever. But once again, good people. So I did that, and the fire marshal's job was great.
What's your biggest takeaway from being the fire marshal? Like you say, hey, this is if I was to put a big accomplishment during that little short stint.
Well, one of the things is that a lot of the uniforms that they're currently wearing, we designed. We covered a whole lot of ground. We started doing some of the similar stuff that I was doing in the Toledo Fire Department, it wasn't quite an accreditation process, but making sure that we were covering the issues that were important to the firefighters. And so the biggest man, we had so much fun. We were dealing with fireworks. It still is in the fire service.
It still is, yeah. You just hear Marshal Reardon talk about it today.
Yeah.
He talked a little bit about the fireworks. It's not just, because again, during his time is when it's changed for consumer fireworks and, X amount of times you get to, shoot them off yourself and the different things. So, yeah, it's always seems to be fireworks.
Fireworks we were dealing with, I can remember a guy, it was a crazy deal. 4th of July is coming up, and this guy has gone and bought fireworks outside the state of Ohio at the time, and he's brought them back in, and they're the ones that you can't shoot, from your own private.
Yeah.
So he talks about it on a newscast, okay, about a day or so before the 4th of July. So he's talking, and I got some of my investigators there. We're watching this on TV. We just happened to have the TV on at that time. And he's talking about this. And he goes, yeah, I got him legal. And he's like, wink, wink, okay? So when the broadcast goes off, my investigators go, that guy that was just on TV? I go, yeah. I said, he just lives down the road here. I said, what? I said, yeah. I said, well, you know what you got to do? So now we got knowledge of, you know what you got to do. So he had like this big trailer full of fireworks. We had to go down there and get them all. And that was not a pretty thing. And so he wanted to talk to me about taking his fireworks. Now, he did it to himself, okay? I can remember talking to this guy, and it was one of those things that you have to do, I think, if you want to get to know people. I left. I was going home for the holiday, okay, back to Toledo. I started talking to this guy when I left the Marshal's office in Rummelsburg. The conversation didn't end until I was just about to Bowling Green, okay? And finally, the final thing he said to me, he said, and so, I'm talking to him for about 2 hours, okay? And I'm just letting him talk, okay? And he's trying to convince me I got to give him his fireworks back, which he knows he's not going to get them back, okay? And he gave me the biggest compliment. He said, at least you listened to me. He said, I knew you couldn't give them back to me, but he said, I figured it was worth a try.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
I said, well, thank you. And he said, you'll have no problems with me, okay? And that was it. But sometimes you have to listen to people.
But you do make a good point. I mean, sometimes they just want to be able to be heard,
Absolutely.
If somebody's listening to you, they have an issue. They know they did whatever, in this case, the fireworks, that you just took the time to actually get on the phone with them and talk to them for 2 hours or however long it was.
Yeah, it was about 2 hours. I mean, he didn't let up.
Yeah.
I was just sitting there going, Fortunately, I didn't lose coverage.
And yet you find that you can apply that to any citizen, said citizen in the area that's upset about something, but just being able to have that calm demeanor and being able to talk to them about what it is, and no different than when we're making changes in our departments, explaining the why to our firefighters. Just explain the why to the citizen, and I think that goes a long way.
Right, and you take their input, but like I said, he knew what was going on. So, I mean, fireworks were always a difficult thing to deal with. You got normal politics going on in the state fire marshal's office that you got to be able to adjust to. But, it was the biggest thing was just being able to put together a crew of people that knew what the mission was, and they were out carrying it out on a pretty regular basis, and they were proud about what they were doing. We had that uniformed presence in how we were doing things, because things were a little bit different before I got there. So we formalized the uniforms and the things, and they got to design the patch that they currently wear.
Okay.
It's currently on the uniform now. We didn't have any formal dress, Class A, for the state fire marshal. We created that, and so
wow,
yeah,
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, so we, it was all over the board. So we because I was saying, well, what do you do for this? So you got a formal event. What do you do for that? Well, we don't have anything. And fortunately, once again, the director of commerce was willing to work with us, and she helped us create that energy to be one of the best.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I forgot to ask you about in when we talked about the fire department was the administration building. So I was there maybe a couple months ago, and I see your name on the wall outside. So it's the Michael P. Bell Administration Building in Toledo.
Right.
When did that start? How did that come about? Because that's pretty awesome.
I think that happened just about the time that I was leaving to become the state fire marshal.
Okay.
And Mayor Finkbinder was the one that actually put it there. I'd been his chief for the whole time he had really been mayor.
Okay? Oh, yeah.
So it got to, he might have felt a little bad about me moving on. But it was, it's very different, and I tell people this, it's very different to actually see a building with your name on it, because most of the time that doesn't happen until you're gone.
Yeah, correct.
And somebody then will think about, and so, it's been really a big deal for my parents. It's more about them than it is me. When they see that, then it's about them, and that they raised some sons that, were able to do some things. So I appreciate what the mayor did, and I appreciate that it's on the building, but that building actually for that about 16 and a half years was my home. Okay. I spent many late days there. So, I mean, I was probably in that building more than I was ever in my own home, And then when you go home, once again, it's old school. You got the pager laying next to you, or, you might have to go back out the door once you get home. So it was a very unique experience, but I mean, that building means a whole lot. And
bet.
yeah, it was an intense time. We went through 9/11, and we had the issue where they weren't sure if all the computers were going to go down, and we're going to have that issue. Yeah, man, I can remember being at the event with the Y2K, and we were planning, and every time it got to be something difficult, I would get assigned that to do, that I have to do the planning for it. I don't know why me, okay? It wasn't the police chief, it was me, okay? And so we're dealing with this Y2K, and I can remember we get done with that night that it's going to happen. It's going to, at this certain time, it's going to, and we get past it. And I had taken my girlfriend to this event that the mayor was holding on the 22nd floor, okay, on Y2K. So if everything shuts down, you're stuck up there, okay?
Yeah.
And so I was just so happy that nothing happened. I go down, get in my car, I leave. Because my mind was intense on this Y2K because it was supposed to be really bad. And we had put backup generators in and everything, so we were ready, but nothing happened.
About 3 days ago, we have a major Microsoft outage, and businesses can't open up, and all this other things happen. There was no warning on that.
No. So I go home. I'm headed home. I said, I know I'm forgetting something. Damn, what am I forgetting? I said, damn, I left my girlfriend back there.
Did you really?
Yeah.
You left her at the play. Oh my! Was she waiting in your office?
They
Or
was
what?
sitting there looking at me, I come up, she was standing by the elevator, and she goes, what happened? Oh, nothing. I was just going to make sure the car was okay. We got to get it warm. No, I had totally, my mind.
You were just not. Yeah.
Well, but that's the other part about being a chief.
Yeah.
Stuff gets intense, and you want to think that, you got these superpowers, you're human. You can focus in, and you're going to have some days that are just really messed up, okay? And you're gonna have to work. You got to work through that, and you got to stay positive because you got to bring the people
That's
that are
right.
around you positive. So your time to be able to do something where you were able to let down is going to be totally different. That's the other thing, and that's the nice part about coming to a conference too. When you get around other chiefs, and you're able to sit there and talk to them, a lot of them have gone through the same thing you've gone through, so that makes it much.
Yes.
This is a safe zone.
That's right.
Okay, you can sit here and you can talk and enjoy yourselves. But yeah, I couldn't believe I had left her, and she's never let me forget about that. So
But that's so true, though. I mean, when you do say about the safe zone or being able to be at a place where you can vent, it doesn't matter your size organization.
No.
We all have the same problems. It's just, whether they're, in your organization at Toledo is a lot bigger than maybe the organization I'm at. And so but they're all the same problems. It's just how we deal with them. And I think that you talked about some major key points that would really help individuals is just the patience. Well, I can tell by talking to you on a regular basis, your calm demeanor, you're able to easily be able to kind of diffuse any situation. And it's just the way of your stature and things of that nature. And so I think that goes a long way with individuals, even on the fire side, and especially in the chief role, is that, we're contagious. We're contagious of our body language, And so if you could be, your mind's intense. And in that case, I say you're flapping them, little legs underneath the water,
Right.
but you're cool, calm, collective on top.
Right.
That duck is not, you're just, I got a
very
stonewall
good.
face, but you might be, crazy underneath. But by being able to just kind of bring this calm demeanor, I think levels that out to a lot of firefighters. And when we talked in Corley's class today, talked about what it was about good leaders, and one of the things being competent and being humble and being trustworthy and credibility and all these different things that are about a good leader. And it's a combination of everything. I think any one of those things could be. It's not just those one things, but you're applying it. You got to be able to choose to when to apply it. The timing of each one of those.
yes, I mean, you see, well, in 16 years, you see a lot of things, and Pete, we were dealing with the Fayette incident a couple weeks ago, and I was telling him about one of the most traumatic things I can remember seeing when there was a couple of them, but I can remember this one involved kids, and we had this fire, and it's on a Sunday in the middle of the day, and it's hot. It's about 3:00 in the afternoon, and not when you expect anybody to die in a fire inside. And so these kids, they started a fire. Their babysitter had walked out and just was visiting another neighbor right there in the complex, and wasn't gone very long, but somebody got a hold of them. And so when I get to the scene, and I'm there probably 7 or 8 minutes from my house because I wasn't working that day, and firefighters are in different positions doing CPR, and it's not good when that's going on, okay? And the person who was supposed to be taking care of these kids are blaming the fire service for not responding quick enough. Now,
And this is when you're in Toledo?
yes.
Yeah, okay.
Now the issue is I think that the response of the first engine on site was like 38 seconds. Okay.
Wow.
Because they were already on the road and they
Okay.
were going past the complex. So they were there.
But in the heat of the moment, when someone's calling 911, they think it's forever. They think it's, they're trying to blame somebody else, that stage of grievance.
That's
grieving.
where, and we knew where they were at, and we never pushed that. We just took the heat. Okay, and I can just remember going to the funeral afterwards because I couldn't go because it was too controversial, but I really felt bad about those kids. And I can remember them holding up the, putting the children actually in the grave until I could get there. Because I really wanted to get there because I just felt so bad. And, I mean, these kids were small enough to where they were putting 2 in a casket. I mean, so you see things, and then you got to act like it's not a big deal. Okay, Pete saw some stuff, and he's got to play through it. And so we try to act like we don't have these emotions, but we do. I mean, that I'm telling you this, and it's been over 20 years since that particular incident, but I can see it like it was yesterday. I can feel it like it was yesterday.
Never leaves you.
No, and the part, you don't want it to leave you because that makes you human.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it makes you still keep caring for the next run. And if you can harden yourself to where you don't feel that, then you really don't care too much about anything. Then now you're in trouble. Okay, I mean, yes, you have to play through it. I mean, we see some things that we have to. So occasionally, we end up making jokes on just because we got to be able to make it to the next run. But it doesn't. It's not like it goes away. You still remember it, and you have to play through it. And I think that's why we have these people who are willing to sit down and talk to people now, and we understand that we have to deal with the mental illness portion of it, and we have to be able to talk to people who understand.
Yeah, because when you were I guess in the heart of being a chief, that would probably been back in the time when mental health and illness for firefighters it was not really talked about. Like, you were just a softie. If you couldn't take it, you couldn't. If you couldn't take the heat in the kitchen, just kind of get out. And if you were going to say something or whatever, then you really kind of got where it should be suppressed. You shouldn't feel so weak. You're not. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, we had just started with the critical incident stress debriefing, and we started doing stuff like that to weigh people out and understand where they might be in that level. And if we had a great Dr. Luton, he would be with us, and he would make sure that if we had an issue, he'd sit down with people and work through it. So, I mean, we started realizing that, we're as human as everybody else. And that's the part we don't talk about a lot because we've got to try to play this tough role. But in actuality, I mean, you feel everything, and I mean, and you don't forget. I can only imagine what some of those firefighters that had to deal with 9/11 when we sent people there, but the ones that were on the scene right away, how they deal with that even today with what they had to deal with. So
now, before you, when you got done as the marshal, you left the marshal's office not because
I left because they told me, this is a funny part. He said, man, you don't want to go back to Toledo to run for mayor. I go, yeah, I'm going to do that. He said, we're telling you don't want to do that. He said, because you're not a politician. I go, I know I'm not. But I've sat through mayor's meetings for over 16 years. So I 3 different mayors and listening to the different philosophies, an hour or two with Cardi, about 5 or 6 hours a week, listening to how things work. So it was almost like taking a master's or a doctorate course in the practical application of mayoring, because you're sitting there listening to this every week at these meetings. So I'm thinking I can make a difference, and I go back and I can tell you this today. I did not know that the deficit was as bad as it was. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have left. There's probably a reason I didn't know that, and that's in God's hands. I was where I was supposed to be, but if I had my ruthers.
Yeah, because that's a hard thing to absorb, really,
Absorb?
Because what kind of deficit are we talking about? I mean,
well, I go back, and at first they tell me it's, first of all, I don't know that there's a deficit because nobody's talking about it.
Okay.
Then they say it's only about 7 million. Okay.
Okay. In a city that size, 7 million is not really.
We might be able to work through that. I know it's going to be a little hardship, but
yeah.
And then we do an audit just before I get in, a couple of weeks before I get in, we find it's 48 million.
Jeez.
Yeah.
And a couple weeks before you get in, like the budget's due because you started in January.
You have to have it balanced by March 30th. Okay, so you got to come up with something. And here's the thing, I'm just a couple weeks into being a mayor. Okay,
yeah.
And you gotta work all this stuff in, and people are getting mad at you, on stuff that I didn't create.
How could
this.
they not get mad at you?
Yeah, it's my fault that we have this.
Yeah. Since you started on January 4th.
It's cuts or taxes.
Well,
right?
and that's the two, and neither of them are acceptable. In addition, there were some laid-off police officers that had actually been put back on just before I got in, which adds to that. Okay.
Yeah.
Because that wasn't included in our audit, so it's a little bit more. So you're trying to work through it, and you're trying to find middle ground. And once again, when you're doing this, you got 360 circle of the information. The people who are coming at you crazy and criticizing, you only have about 180 of it, okay? And there is no easy solution, because sometimes people look for easy solutions. And one thing as a fire chief, sometimes there's no easy solution. You know what you got to do, and even if you don't want to do it, you know what you got to do. Can't afford to lay any people off, because if we lay them off, then we're going to run people away from our city, so the economic development portion of it isn't going to occur, okay?
But we all know personnel costs are the biggest costs in the,
Yeah, and so then the other part is that there were people that were promised raises, okay, that I didn't,
Yeah.
And so you gotta deal with all this, and so trying to work through that and make people understand was a very difficult time. You really would like to be able to come in and just, okay, everybody, this is an easy deal,
Sure.
we can do. But 48 million, that was 1/5 of the budget. That puts you basically close to receivership, okay, which would have put us in the same condition that Detroit was in at the time.
Yep.
And there was no way I wanted to see us go there, because that's a whole nother thing. You lose any type of control you have, and it's strictly a state-run type deal until you can get yourself balanced. And they're going to do the same things we have to do. The difference is that we're just handing it off, okay? So we worked through it, tried to explain it to people. They weren't buying it. They somehow thought that, you're doing this just to mess with people. But the question is, if I've been in the fire service and was the chief there, and I was the marshal, and I don't have no issues. Why would I come back here messing with somebody?
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. It's not even logical. For what reason?
Was it during your time? Was it during your time that we had that you added a whole bunch of firefighters as mayor or as fire chief?
We added a number as mayor and as fire chief.
Okay. Good.
So what we did is we started adding people, and that was part of the deal. I mean, I had to absorb these 14 or 15 police officers that were already laid off. Obviously, if they were laid off and they were put back before we even fixed the budget, okay, they were put back by the mayor before me, then that it was like overloading you, okay, and breaking you. And once again, it was like being the first day as the fire chief, okay? We are going to break you. We're going to break you, okay? and and I'm like, well, yeah, you might be able to do it this time.
It's
So,
a whole different ballgame,
yeah.
I bet, in the mayor's office.
Yeah, and it was in the politics, and you can explain things to people. Nobody believes you. They think you're telling. For some reason, you're lying to them, and you're just trying to. And I'm thinking, okay, so what would be my motivation for doing that? I mean, I live here, and my parents live here. Why would I do something that wants to harm anybody? But that's not the.
Some people just have trouble believing, like, just because of how they were raised, or they've been let down so much, and how could you be that nice to me? And some people just, you know what I mean?
Well,
it's just how they are.
Well, on that situation, I would say that the people, that were trying to convince me not to leave the marshal's office probably were on target with what they were saying. But I'm going to tell you what, the job of being a mayor was probably the greatest opportunity I had ever in my life. It was a lot of fun. We were working with different groups. We were looking for foreign investments, and we were doing everything we needed to be able to do to try to make up the difference, because the problem with marketing at that particular period of time is that other cities inside the United States, because that was happening throughout the whole United States, were going through the same thing. So if you take a product from a business from this place, it's just going to put some more people. So you haven't fixed the problem. You got to find new money somewhere.
Yeah.
And so that's why I was traveling abroad and stuff like that to try to figure out if we could pull something together that might help the city of Toledo and Northwest Ohio move forward. And we did a little bit of that, which actually saved us from having to lay anybody off. But people, they were.
I would say that's a huge accomplishment.
Yeah.
You're able to, overcome a deficit of that nature with, and not have to lay anybody off.
But here's the deal, because you're bumping up against everybody. You're bumping up against the unions. You're bumping up against, because people are mad and they don't have anybody else to blame but you.
Yep.
Okay? And you just got to accept that you're going to get the blame for this, even though you didn't create it. Okay? So, and I the biggest joke and it's sort of funny to me, and I'm cool with it, but it's like, okay, you go into a situation in the private sector, to a situation where it's a $48 million deficit, and when you leave, you have a $9 million surplus. Normally, you probably get a bonus.
That's very true, but not in the public service. You know what I mean?
My ass went flying out that door. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Did you only do one term? Was it one
That's
term?
That's all I could
Yeah.
get in. Yeah. I mean, because people were mad.
But the reason why I say that is because that all happened in 4 years.
Yeah.
It's not like you know what I mean? That's a short period of time to overcome all that.
And I understood why, because there's no way nobody believed what you were saying to them. Okay.
Yeah.
And you got all the information. You're the one that's going to be held accountable for it, but everybody else has an opinion on it. Okay. And, we fixed it, and we fixed it to where we didn't lay anybody off. Okay. And we kept people working, but
they didn't get their raises, and they didn't get
right. And
there were other programs cut, or
and I get it, but I didn't promise that. I just had to fix what was broke to be able to move forward, so that at least when I left, it was stabilized for the next mayor. Okay, and so
did you find some new money during that time? Did that traveling abroad get some new business out there?
We got enough to where, without having to pay the raises initially, which we would have done, but not having to pay them initially, actually saved us a little time, along with some foreign investments and people who we sold some property off. We were doing everything we could to try to not have to lay any employees off. And that was the key of what we were trying to do. Now, it was misinterpreted, but that's all we were trying to do.
Yeah.
Trying to keep them all working because, once again, you start laying off a bunch of, and I still, at my house, I have the layoff slips. If you have to lay off a bunch of police and firefighters, then people start going, man, we ain't moving anything to your city, okay? We're not.
You've still got all the layoff slips? You know, I've heard about other politicians getting in trouble for keeping documents.
Oh, well, yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, well, I guess I'm going to jail. No. No, I have, I got copies of that because I knew that someday later nobody's going to ever believe that you even had the layoff slips. So we were scheduled for something like 250 layoffs. Okay.
Wow. Yeah, I remember it was a huge number.
Yeah, and we didn't lay anybody off. So, but that gets overlooked when it's about, well, I didn't get my raise. Okay?
Yeah.
Well, just think about the people that wouldn't even have a job. Okay, but that part doesn't get explained, and I get it, and it's going to be like that to the end of history. So I'm not going to even try to go over it again. If I was there, I would do it exactly the same way that I did the first time if I had the same situation, because there's no other way around it.
I don't know, that was amazing. I mean, you being in that situation and being able to hang on to those jobs, and nobody that's down, you talked about it before, they don't see the other side of the coin. They don't, I mean, just running my own organization with, 90, 100 people in it, and having to go through some layoffs and do other things to make sure that the business stays viable. It's a difficult place to be. It really is. So I commend you for what you did. It was great.
Well, but you know what's really interesting is that I'll still run into people, and they won't talk to me. And I'm like, what'd I do to you? Well, you took I didn't take nothing. This thing was broke before I got here, dude. Now, if you just need somebody to blame it on, okay, I'll take the heat. I don't have no problem if you never want to talk to me again.
Yeah.
I'm good with that too. But it was broke before I got there. And that's what I think they were trying to tell me at the state, because
They probably knew.
people
but
knew.
they couldn't tell you.
But they couldn't tell
Yeah.
me, okay? That's why they were telling me, you don't want to go back there. But you don't want to go back there. But I love this place. These people love me. You don't want to go back there. So, no, it was, but being the mayor and having the ability to help people, that's what this is all about. That's what I'm still doing. I still work with a lot of charities and stuff like that. And it's about, I haven't moved from Toledo. I still live here. Okay, there are a lot of people that get their stuff and they're gone. Okay, I'm still there. Okay, because I think we live in the greatest city in the state of Ohio. Okay, I had some people in from California a couple weeks ago. They could not believe Northwest Ohio. They said, we didn't know this existed here. I took them up to Put-in-Bay and some other places, and they were like, "What? We thought Catalina was good. Catalina hasn't got nothing on what you guys." And I guess they're cutting a lot of the trees down in California because of the fire hazard. So the idea of riding around and seeing green trees, but we take stuff like that for granted, and we sometimes don't realize how good we have it, and so, I don't know. It's been an interesting.
So then you had after mayor, then you were off for a while. Like, you didn't do anything, right? You didn't. You just kind of like actually retired until now. Like,
what I will say is that I was retired from the standpoint that I was doing everything for free. Okay, and sat on about 5 or 6 different boards, and I'm still helping people. I still do. Back in Toledo, we have a Cherry Street mission called Be the Bridge. That's the biggest event for the Cherry Street mission, and we do it underneath the bridge where we used to find people when we were doing the census. When we we had to count people, they'd be underneath the bridge. So we do an event down there that helps the Cherry Street Mission, do things with the Boys and Girls Club, Victory Center, which was with cancer, and I think that there may be some opportunities to help with the fire side of that when we get back, and maybe do some teamwork with the Victory Center. So I sit on that board. I sit on the University of Toledo. I was sitting on the University of Toledo Foundation. I did that for 9 years. That ended about 3 weeks ago. I sit on the Ohio Police Collaborative Board. Okay, so I'm the only firefighter sitting there. And then, what's he doing here? No, but and that's a very interesting process, and listening to these law enforcement people talk about some of the things they have to deal with that is inclusive sometimes of the fire portion of it. You know, like what we were talking about earlier, the mental health issues and how do you deal with that, and what type of response team that maybe you need in these different cities to deal with that, so it doesn't tie up the fire side or the police side, because most of these people need some help that's beyond just taking them to a hospital. That's not going to do it. You really got to find a special place. So yeah.
So how'd you find yourself to where you're at now? So you're official. You're an ambassador, right? For the ambassador for first priority.
Yes.
Okay.
The way I found myself doing that is that I was Pete and Jason reached out to me, and they started talking about victim care, and so that's a hook for firefighters right away. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm not the person who deals with any of the renovations and things like that have to be done, but mine's is about, okay, what can we do for the person who has been harmed right away? Okay, and this was one of the companies that said, this is what we're trying to do. We understand that there's Red Cross there, but sometimes they can't make it, and there are other people that still need help. And how do we're a company that's willing to try to fill that void, to try to be the bridge that gets them when the fire chief is ready to leave the scene and the insurance company hasn't kicked in yet. Okay, so those people are sitting there on the curb trying to figure out, okay, what they're going to do. Maybe I'm going to go to Aunt Mabel's or somewhere to stay, but I really don't have a plan. Well, they talked to me about what they do from the standpoint of victim assistance, from the standpoint of cleaning things, putting people in hotels, doing the things that I would, as a incident commander, want to see somebody do.
Sure.
So that's what hooked me. And otherwise, if it wasn't about what they were prepared to do to help people, I probably wouldn't be here.
So you see the vision on the creating the relationships with the people.
Yes.
But also then you probably bring a little bit of value to not Pete and Jason too, and the team of understanding how to find the incident commander.
Absolutely.
When to stay back, when to get involved, what things to say, those sorts of things that, and I want to talk about that process.
Yeah, don't drive over the hose.
Yeah, don't drive over the hose, hey, what it is. So Jason, I want to, can you run us through the process of, let's say that I'm a new chief. I've never dealt with any sort of what this process is. It's a first, or even an officer. I would say an officer, maybe the chief's out of town, not there. And what is the process for like a company like yours?
So we do a myriad of things. We let's say you're an incident commander and you're calling us out for board up. If you think about a house and an unboarded house after a fire is an attractive nuisance for other people, right? It's an opportunity for maybe some kid to crawl in there, some other things. So we do property securement. When we arrive on scene, all of our guys are trained to deal with a fire scene. They're instructed to ask for the incident commander as soon as they get on scene. They're supposed to park their vehicles away to not impede any of the emergency vehicles coming in and out.
And we're talking about how far after, like what, when would you?
Our call, I mean, our sweet spot and where we can be the most assistance to you guys when you're out there on the scene is to be there right about as the fire is ending. So,
okay.
So once you've got that fire out and you're getting into your investigation, we want to be there and staged and ready to go. So our normal response time is 1 hour, which, going back to what you were talking about accreditation in 7 minutes.
There you go.
Yeah.
I feel like, it for us, and we're responding to multiple fire departments, and we want to travel there safely as a private organization. We arrive within 1 hour, and we'd like to be there before you guys have actually left the scene, so we can kind of explain what's going to happen to the individual with you guys, with the incident commander right there.
How do you guys get called out there? Are you like so are you with or attached to like different insurance companies nationwide, State Farm? Like, does the insurance company make the contact to
and let me first priority is the parent corporation, and they own the franchise of 1-800 Board Up.
Okay.
There are other restoration companies around the country that own 1-800 Board Ups as well.
Oh, okay. So it could be second priority in Michigan, but they also own the franchise of 1-800 Board Up too as well.
And then who owns the franchisee is Belfour Restoration, which is a very large conglomerate. But the thing about it is, I got into this business because I want to help people, right? I don't help them the way you do. You save lives, much more important than what I do. We try to save property and try to guide people through the initial process of what is a major emotional loss. And we do that by not just giving them a place to stay, and we bring water bottles, and we bring a bag of goodies of things that they're going to need over the next couple of days. We do emergency clothing, where we'll take 2 weeks worth of their smoked up clothing and get them professionally dry cleaned and deodorized and back to them within the next 24 to 48 hours, so that they've got clothes for the next few weeks. We'll get them a place to stay. But victim assistance is more than just what they, just getting them into that place. It's all the things that are important. It might be grandma's china that's really, really important, and we'll focus on that. Get it out, get it clean, get it into a safe environment. We'll guide them through the insurance process. And yes, we are preferred vendors from insurance companies, but insurance companies don't pay for our victim assistance. We do that as an added value service.
Yeah, it's pretty much like a courtesy then. So, because I would say, like, on our end, being as a fire chief, we don't contact the restoration companies, but we also know, like, we have to give guidance to the homeowner. We're standing out there in the street and knowing that they're not going to be able to stay back in there. So I've always advised them to, contact their insurance company. And then if they don't have an insurance company, then it kind of falls back into,
Yep, exactly. The carriers are getting to the scene later and later and later, and your insurance policy is a contract between you and that insurance company, and there's actual language in it that states that an insured must do everything they can at and after the time of loss to prevent further damage. And so they actually have an obligation to get that boarded up, whether they can get a hold of the insurance company or somebody can help them through that process or not. So that's kind of where we fulfill, and we don't. Yes, we do the full restoration, and we do rebuilds, and we do all of those things, but we never sign a contract with a person until they've had an opportunity to meet with their insurance company. So we just we sign for the board up, which is a very small piece, and we do everything. We winterize the house if it's in the middle of winter. We do the other things that make sure that further damage doesn't happen, so that they get fully covered. And then we look at their personal belongings. That's the second contract we would generally sign, where we can pack out all of their belongings. We bring them back to our facility. We clean them. We deodorize them. We store them until the house is built. And then the last contract we sign is the biggest one, which is building a house back when it's all complete. And we're a full service GC with offices in in 5 states and 6 locations.
And so when you say you take all that stuff back, do you just have one central location that you take it back, or where, like?
For our Northwest Ohio location, yeah, we're in Toledo, but we're about to move into Sylvania into a little different space. But yeah, we're talking 30,000 square foot warehouse with all of the things that you need to get through that science of cleaning.
Some of the things that we run into is just, because we're not essentially as chief standing there in the street, I can't say, hey, call this company, you know what I mean? It has to be essentially a list of them, or they've heard your name and they tell us, like, hey, this is who we want, and we may assist them with a phone or something. Because it's kind of in the same realm as like tow truck drivers and tow truck companies, where if we were to contact the tow truck company, it actually puts the fire department on the hook for that bill. And I didn't know that. I learned that the hard way. And I learned this from a motor vehicle accident, like, never to do that. And I realized, I said, well, the cops do it all the time. Well, the difference is yeah, they do it all the time, and they actually have to pay for it usually. And so what we had found is obviously they do a rotation of different departments within it. So do you work with dispatch centers across? So like,
Absolutely.
and then be a part of a list? Okay.
Yep, absolutely. What we've established is a vetting process for people that do what we do, right? I've worked with several different fire departments in Illinois and some of our other locations where once we establish, okay, you have to have this much insurance, you have to have this, you have to have that, and then you out there as an incident commander has a list. I go, well, I've got these 3 companies, and this is the next one on our call rotation. Who do you want me to call? And you as or either walk them through that and have them do it themselves if it's going to cause a problem for you, or otherwise,
or we could say, hey, do you want dispatch to call the next available for you, because they have no idea and they don't want to, do a selection of, I have no idea what I'm looking at. Yeah. But I would say, to your point there, you make it a good point about being able to vet them out. Not all one restoration company is the same.
That's absolutely true.
And so like to be on the list, to meet certain criteria should be something, kind of already done. So maybe there's 10 restoration companies, but really in reality, there's only 5 restoration companies that meet the criteria of what we would actually, have in a list or whatever.
Yeah, I'm sure there's 15, 20 restoration companies around the greater Toledo area. But do they not only meet these criteria, but are they all background checked, all that stuff? But do they also do all the victim assistance and the extra that we go? Are they able to respond for indoor air quality? Like, I know we talked to last time we had lunch about all of the cancer and those situations for firefighters, and the cancer rates are very high. Well, the most dangerous time is when the fire's off-gassing, and if it's a small fire and you're not red tagging that house and saying you can't live there, then somebody needs to get equipment into that space so that we can create an indoor air quality that's livable for the folks that are still staying there.
Well, yeah, and it's the bad quality for firefighters, folks that are there, but also for your people. Yeah. Your people that and I never really thought about that until we talked about it a little bit. Like, as far as the restoration people that are coming afterwards, and we talk about not only the environment that they're in, but maybe to Pete's case, some of the things that he just experienced at a recent fire. Of how you guys sometimes show up on a fire that is not necessarily, it was a fatal fire, right? Yeah. And so when we talk about mental health and wellness and how it impacts somebody that maybe in your guys' world is not something that you're, like you said, you're staged off the back. You're not going to go in until the, incident commander says, hey, you're coming up or whatever. But then you experience that. So you want to talk a little bit about that, Pete?
Well, I've got 2 teenage boys, and the fire that we went to in Fayette had some fatalities. Simply being there for a board up and doing our job and making sure, my crew is safe and getting water to them. I know the news station was there. It wasn't until I just started, kind of walking around, reaching out to the neighbors and, just letting them know what we're doing. That I heard, their play-by-play of what they actually saw in an attempted rescue. And I almost saw it through their eyes. I wasn't there. I didn't see the actual fire or the smoke. But then it hit me. It was about a 45-minute drive back to Toledo. And it just played over in my head. And, I've got the 2 teenage boys at home. And, just to think what someone goes through, that dad particularly was working about 25, 30 minutes away and had to get the news at work. And he said, did everyone make it out? And the lady that lived next door just said, I'm not sure what's happening. And that just played over in my head. And that's something that I had to take home and process because being a dad, kids that age, and the magnitude of that loss just made me start thinking about those outskirts of Toledo, the areas that might have all volunteer firefighters. And so Chief Bell and I had made numerous attempts to go back out. One, right before the debriefing, we just wanted to drop in, make sure, they knew that we were supportive of them. And then the latest is we're doing a fire prevention collaboration with them. And, we have the ability to provide smoke detectors, and we're going to bring both other fire departments that came out to that fire and help. And then we're going to work with there's a local church that they had set up a GoFundMe account that we're going to direct everyone if they want to donate to that. But really, in that instance, it's prevention's the best tool. And I think in those areas, you guys as firefighters become an important component for the awareness. And unfortunately, that kind of loss is what, it's now brought a community together, but now moving forward, how do we make that worth it? And I think that, that's the other component of 1-800-BOARD-UP. It's about giving back. It's about making sure that, there's the restoration companies, the firefighters, the community at large. Tragedy and disaster is not something that you take lightly. And I think the mental health in dealing with that, at least from my perspective, that was real to the point where I was like, hey, we've got to get back out there. I want to do something in the community. Jason's very supportive of what we provide. And I think that going forward just speaks volumes about what we're trying to do.
Mm-hmm. It honestly really does, because when I heard it, so that's out in my neck of the woods, and up in Fulton County area, and so it does. It impacts small communities, and for you guys to be active in it. So, with that being said, you may have had this little experience of the impact that we would never, like, until you brought it up. I mean, I had never really thought about how somebody that could be impacted from fatality of a fire of the other people that are all on these scenes, because there's a lot of other people that are on these scenes. And so have you applied it to, say, any of your workers, or how does it affect them? Because it's different when you go into a little small trash can fire that has smoke damage and you're cleaning clothes, compared to I'm in a room where 2 people actually lost their lives.
Yeah, I think each person within our organization will experience it differently. That one hit home for me because, I actually spoke to the neighbors, and I mean, it's still, I could tell you verbatim what they said, and that resonated with me. I think each of us walking into a disaster, no one takes it lightly, both from a self-protection perspective, nor from a, this is just a flood or this is just a fire. I think we all take it with the utmost seriousness. When you're going in, you're trying to do your absolute best to make sure that that person or those people never have to, they don't have to have that, if I'm cleaning up a basement flood or whatever, they're not going to go down that basement and just kind of, that was a toilet overflow or sewage backup. We don't want them to have any memory of that. And obviously fixing the source of the problem first, but back to the fire, it's the same thing. And Jason could describe this better, but it's forensic estimated and surgical restoration.
Oh, okay.
And
Yeah.
so you're really looking.
Yeah.
I know you're looking to build a home, right?
Yeah.
Insurance companies will only pay for what is actually physically damaged. So everything within that house that is damaged has to be forensically estimated, like Pete said. They're bean counters. If your same house burned to the ground that I was talking about, you were talking about building, the estimate would be the size of a telephone book versus 14 pages of a contract and specifications and a set of blueprints to build a house. So it's a very different process. The company that you hire in that situation has to have a full understanding of the science behind smoke odor eradication, the science behind, at what point is a structure physically damaged to the point where it has to be replaced versus where it can be restored. And that surgical construction process on the back end is really what we focus on when we get into restoration. And I want to go back, we're here to talk about 1-800 board up, but the Belfor, the corporate parent company, has done an excellent job in order to be one of these franchises. You have to have the ability to do what we're talking about. You have to approach every loss as though you're there to help people first and foremost. And I got to tell you, I gave Chief Bell the title of ambassador, but that's what we want to do to every victim that comes in, whether they use First Priority or Belfor or one of the other 1-800 board up franchises to do the actual repairs is irrelevant. What's important is that I give them enough information about the process so that they can make an informed decision. And if you're more comfortable using XYZ restoration, please do use them. Please do. But if you have any questions about the process, I've been doing this for 25 years, and I've handled close to 1,000 fires. So, and you guys, and I don't want to diminish anything that you guys do, but the typical municipality has maybe 3 fires a year, and Toledo much more. But a municipality like Oregon or Napoleon or something like that may have 3 fires a year. I've got 45 departments that in our Chicago office, we've got 45 departments, and my guys that respond to that stuff will respond to 3 times 45, and we do close to 100 plus fires a year when we're on those kind of scenes. So
I'm going to tell you that you asked me yesterday, we were talking, what brought me to these guys, and you heard it, is that they care about people, okay? There are people that show up sometimes, and I know this when I was fire chief, that you really don't want to. The standard I use is that if I had something happen at my house right now, who would I use, okay? And I'm more than aware that, and that's the other part of what excited me about this. When you're the incident commander, and especially in the wintertime, and you're trying to get people back to the station because they're wet and everything else, you definitely want to know, and regardless of whether it's us or whoever, you want to know that whoever you're handing it off to is going to take care of business, that it's not going to be an embarrassment. And I think that's the key to any of that. And so from the standpoint, this is an element, once again, that bridges the part of the chief leaving, and that the person that they're leaving it to, regardless of whether it's us or whoever, is going to take good care of those people the same way you did when you showed up as the chief. Mm-hmm. Okay, and that's what hooked me in. And I can't lie, it's great to be sitting here at a chiefs conference with other fire chiefs. I haven't done that in a long time. And I was at the February of the winter symposium, and fire chiefs are a totally different breed, and they're learning that. Pete, definitely, I don't see Jason as much. Pete's running me. I said, you don't want to say that. Yeah. I'm teaching him we went to a meeting last week, and everybody was super intense. They were like, he said, well, they look like they were very intimidating. I said, they were listening to what you were saying. But once I said, but what you got to do is wait to the end, and then we can actually talk one-on-one. And, with firefighters, you have to prove who you are before they're willing to even talk to you. So you can't walk in, give a show, and walk out. Yeah. That's not going to work. And so you have to become part of the culture. And from what I can tell with Jason, Pete, TJ, they're part of the culture. And so that makes it very easy. He called me, I laughed because he calls me ambassador. That's my next title. So it's Chief, Marshal, Mayor, Ambassador. Okay. So I moved to the next level. But I know, regardless of whether it's first priority or whoever, the handoff of the victim is extremely important. So whether it's done through an RP so that it makes people feel comfortable, a rotation, whatever, the idea of understanding that there's the next step, and the next step moves into the private sector. Sure. That there is some lane for still patient victim care, I think is the key portion.
Well, we will end on that note because I have about 12 minutes before I got to get down and do an introduction for this class. So if there's any takeaway, so I don't want to get, and I'm probably supposed to be getting that classroom ready. So if there's any other major takeaways that that you have about 10 seconds that you want to say before we're gone, I really appreciate this time. I think that there was a lot that we were able to cover. I think that you have one heck of a story, and so do appreciate everybody's time.
The one takeaway is thank you guys for what you do. Peace.
Thank you for tuning in to the Triple P Podcast, premier, professional, and proactive, brought to you by the Ohio Fire Chiefs Association. If you'd like to hear more, follow us on Spotify, Apple, Google, or wherever you get your podcast. And if you feel so inclined, please help us spread the word by telling your fire and EMS friends about this channel.